up, YouTube? If not you, then who? If not now, then when? It's your boys, Detroit Love, PDubs Arcade Loft, Michael B. the Game Genie, and Restralgia with another episode of the Super Game Room Dudes. It's Friday night, and we are live.
Man, it is good to have Detroit Love back in the saddle, boys. Am I right? We've been missing Carl the last few weeks. He hasn't been able to be here, but we got a full crew tonight. The four horsemen of arcade and retro gaming are back in the saddle. And not only that, we have a special guest on tonight's broadcast. Ladies and gentlemen, do me a favor in the live chat. Please give a warm welcome to Sean from Blaze Entertainment. Sean, how are you, man?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. A little bit sleepy given the time difference, but nothing a bit of caffeine went hurt.
He asked several times if we could do the interview earlier, to which I said no.
It wasn't even that it said earlier. Like I asked once, do you want to pre-record? And obviously we can't do that. And then you said it was 1 a.m. my time. And then when I looked at the video earlier, it was 2 a.m. my time. I was like, it's another hour.
I didn't say it was ever 1 a.m. your time. You assumed that. I said it was 9 p.m. Eastern.
Daylight savings, man. It's a killer. Nobody knows what the time is at any time of day, wherever you are in the world.
Yeah. So, Sean, I don't mean to throw my co-host under the bus, but I got to tell you, when Mike told me that he booked you for the show, he said, by the way, he asked us if we would tape the interview earlier in the day. Could we do a taped interview? And I said no. And he was laughing pretty mean. We could have taped it for we could have taped it for the man. We could have taped it.
Oh, that would take away our charm, and the audience would hate that because they wouldn't be able to interact and ask their questions. There's a lot of people in the community excited about the Evercade. They want to ask questions about the Alpha, and to take that away from them, it just didn't seem fair. So I thought we'd torture you and make you come on here 2 a.m. in the morning.
Oh, that's perfectly fine. At least I get a line tomorrow. I mean, I'm lucky that my boss has decided to give me the day off. So
nice.
All right, guys. As always, you are watching the Super Game Room Dudes, the leader in home arcade and entertainment for the last 3 years and running. We just keep leading the pack, and now you can see why everyone wants to come on the show. Evercade decided to step into the arcade space, and whose number did they call first? They called the Super Game Room Dudes, right? So very exciting that you guys are on the show so we can learn a little bit more about this product line. There's a lot of questions that we're going to have. But before we get to the Evercade Alpha, we definitely want to talk about some other topics Evercade related, such as they've hit 1 million in sales, the Tomb Raider, Evercade VSR. There's questions about those, and then we'll get to the Evercade Alpha. If you're new to the broadcast, I'm your host, PDubs Arcade Loft. With me, as always, are my co-hosts, Detroit Love, Michael B. the Game Genie, and Restralgia. And Restralgia here will definitely show you how to mod the Evercade in 2024. Isn't that right, Restralgia?
I will probably not do that. I reserve the majority of my modding videos to isolate on the PlayStation Classic. That's
what they ever do to you? Why do you gotta hurt the PlayStation Classic like that?
Have you played the PlayStation Classic out of the box?
Yes, it works exactly like I remember from my days of playing the PlayStation over in Europe.
Yeah, I think that's the problem for us here in North America. So
yeah, I don't have a problem with it.
That's fair. That's fair.
Now, before we dive into the topics, as always, we say hi to who's here in the live chat. So, Sean, bear with us. We will get through this as quickly as possible. So let me see who is lurking in the live chat. Jason's here. Ritual Dell's here. Chris, NXXW, Papa Brad's Gaming, Danny Z, Paul Mindeman, E. Leo, Hobby Monsters here as well. JJ in the house. Frankie D, Calvin Wong, Tim York, Quentin is here as well. Danny Z, Israel Gaming, Jim, the Pacers fan, Mitchell B's here, Michael B's here, Bo Knows Tecmo is here, and who else are we missing? Matt Astor Gaming, Tim York, E. Leo, Danny Z. I think we said those names already, but they're just chatting away in the live chat. Timmy York is here as well. Patrick Murphy with a late hello as well. The Retro Arcade Trooper, Biggie Fries, And AMN is here, and he says he's here for Sean. There you go. Hopefully that's a friend of yours.
It is. Hi, Andrew. How's it going?
And Retro Lab Rat is here as well. Okay, so Sean, before we dive into the topics, real quick, if you want to introduce yourself and what your role and position is with Evercade, that way the viewers who haven't seen you before know who you are, and then we're going to get this thing fired away.
Sure. Well, I'm Sean. I'm the head of marketing for Blaze Entertainment, so I'm responsible for a lot of the product research and getting all the communication out there that you guys see, from press releases to trailers to social media to emails. Pretty much everything where it touches the public in any way is from this brain right here. So yeah, that's pretty much my day to day, making sure that you guys all know about Evercade and everything about it, and that everybody else continues to enjoy it.
Nice.
Fantastic. Well, your marketing skills must have paid off, Sean, because for our first topic of the night, I just wanted to touch on the fact that you guys recently announced that you've hit 1 million in game cartridge sales. So something's got to be going good with the marketing there and word of mouth and things like that to have 1 million units sold. How does that feel for Evercade hitting that number? And kind of like just walk us through how you get when you hit that number. How did it feel and all that stuff?
It's pretty crazy because we've never really been public with the numbers that we've done. One of the reasons with a lot of this stuff is you want to make sure that you're focused on the right things. And sometimes if you're there saying, "Oh, we've sold this much, we've done this much, we've done that much," and you're chasing targets and milestones, and sometimes you're sort of missing out on what you're trying to achieve, which we want to get Evercade as far as we can, but we also want to bring the best stuff to Evercade. So we never really overly focused on it. So it kind of, in an odd way, it crept up on us. So it was a bit of a surprise, and then when it ticked over, it was really, really good to sort of experience, because it's like, right, well, we're going to go out there. I think a lot of people will either be expected of that number or really surprised, and I think it's probably been more of the really surprised, which is nice for us. We've got a bit further than we probably expected from this, especially in the 4 years. I mean, the fact that we're still here 4 years later is a surprise to quite a lot of people in a pleasant way. So
yeah, 4 years. Wow, it doesn't feel like it's been 4 years. I'm surprised. Restralgia, what do you think about them hitting 1 million in cartridge sales, and which one was your favorite?
Oh, that's a good question. So, one, congratulations. That's a pretty big accomplishment, and I'm pretty familiar with the roots and where you guys came from, and just how much you guys had worked to get to this point. So it's really nice to see a small company grow the way that you guys have. So that's incredible. So congratulations on that. In terms of my favorite cartridge, that's a tough one. I think I'm really into the Duke Nukem carts. I think those are going to be my top ones right now. The two different Duke Nukem carts. I'm going to put them both in there at the top. But I'm also a big fan of all of the indie titles that you guys release. I love indie games. There's like a nice charm to them, and I don't feel like very many companies give any real attention to the indie studios. So I'd put those up at the top for me.
Mike will be the game genie. What you got for Sean here on their cartridges?
Renovation collection. I do love me some renovation games, being a big Sega Genesis and TurboGrafx 16 CD guy back in the day. I love the renovation collection. Some of the best, most interesting games that you could have brought. So good job on that. And anytime I get a chance to play any of those games, I'm a happy guy. I also really like Crisis Core. I'm a big fan of Crisis Core. That was my favorite until I got my hands on the renovation collection. So I like Restralgia. I like playing the indie games, and I'm really excited about this, that now with the new alpha coming out, being able to play the indie games on a arcade type system, that excites me too.
Carl, have you been able to play any of the Evercade cartridges yourself? You're muted, Carl.
You're muted, Carl.
A significant milestone. We'll definitely have to have you back on the show when you hit the 10 million mark. We'll take a spot for
I don't think I'll have the same hairline I have now if we hit 10 million, to be perfect. I mean, it's already suffering now. So
I know the feeling, brother.
But in regards to the cartridges, I mean, the Namco Museum, that's always been my favorite. I'm a vertical guy, so those cartridges or those games are always going to have the best appeal and the most appeal to me. But yeah, I have not seen this in person, and I'm definitely interested in the product that we'll talk about going ahead.
All good, man. All good. So now that you've hit 1 million in cartridge sales, are we expecting there to be? Well, actually, let me ask you this, Sean. Are you allowed to share like what is your best-selling cartridge of all time?
Well, we technically are, yeah. So some of our early carts are obviously going to be the better sellers because they've been around longer. That's the kind of nature of that thing. But until recently, Duke Nukem definitely was one of the best ones. It went very, very quickly. We also had it in with the limited edition, Atomic Edition that we did as well, which helped push all of those numbers through. So it's all really, really good from that. And the one thing to sort of remember as well, we don't sell the carts ourselves to consumers. So, we sell it to retailers, sell it out, so it all goes through from that, which is what's led to the other announcement that we had last week is that Tomb Raider Collection 1 is now our fastest selling.
Wow.
So that's based on, the fact of how many people have been interested, what we've been able to sell through our partner retailers and then through the wider retail space. That's now the biggest. It's one of those things that is quite interesting that I think until last year, we have a physical chart still in the UK for games, and it's a bit hit and miss here and there with the charting of what's on there because shops don't report things correctly and everything else. But somewhere last year, the Team 17 home computer collection debuted on the chart, and it took a lot of people by surprise in the fact of wow, they're actually selling quite a lot of physical units for us to be able to do that, and then we've now tried to encourage more people to start porting that data because we're pretty sure that, I mean, physical sales, as you know, is very different in the modern gaming age and, from discs and stuff. I mean, I don't know if it's the same in America and Canada, but in the UK, the top 5 is pretty much GTA, Minecraft, whichever FIFA game. I'm sure probably be mad at them, a Call of Duty and Mario Kart.
Yeah.
And that's basically been locked at that for the last 10 years. But outside of that, we could potentially be up that high with the amount that we get for the sales when the day one hits and when the reporting goes through. So, yeah, it's definitely the fastest selling. It's definitely when it hits release date and the data starts coming through. I'm sure everybody's going to see a pang of nostalgia at Tomb Raider being on the charts.
So one thing I've always seen is, some people when they look at your game lineup, it's fun watching how over the years it's been developing, and we've seen some what you would call those targeted or really big exciting licenses, right? Like when people were like, oh, it's Pico, oh, it's Galco. Some people just don't appreciate the smaller games, right? But now we're seeing stuff like Duke Nukem. Now we're seeing stuff like Tomb Raider, this massive Capcom partnership. Are there more bigger, exciting partnerships that you'll be announcing soon? Are you guys looking for the big stuff now? Or are you going to still focus on the smaller indie stuff as well?
Well, there's a couple of answers to that question. I mean, what one person's small game is another person's massive game.
Right.
I mean, you're just talking about our favorite carts. My personal favorite is the first Galco collection. Being in Europe and like having played those games because they were all across Spain, the Balearic Islands, where a lot of English, German people went on holiday every summer, and that was where a lot of arcades were. And that collection and its second collection has done absolutely massive wonders for our Spanish contingent. The growth in Spain of Evercade and the interest because we released something that they knew and was big to them So, it's not something that was massively known apart from one or two that I think Atari imported or something like that back in the day into American arcades. But in Spain, it was huge. So, that's been really, really big for them. On the license thing, we're definitely looking at larger licenses. It would be unfair to say we haven't always been looking at these licenses. One of the things I've kind of always said in how licensing works, because it's always a question that comes up, is it's not just about turning up at somebody's doorstep with a briefcase full of money and hoping that there's a deal to be made. You've got to be in the right point for you as the company, so Evercade as a company, as well as the licensor as a company, to be ready to license that stuff and to take the chance on it. So it's very much a right place, right time for everybody, but you've always got to be there asking the question to get there. So there's definitely going to be more in future. There's always conversations being had with a lot of the larger, more well-known publishers, as well as the smaller publishers and also indie publishers. And it's always great to unearth and rediscover what people are also now beginning to relicense or discover that they actually can license. It's been 5 or 6 years now that the retro market has kind of upped its notoriety in a lot of people's board meetings and things like that, and people are beginning to work out what the worth is of what they might have down in the library dungeons of their game publishing houses. So yeah, I mean, there's always conversations to be had at every part of the tiers.
Interesting. Michael B., what do you have for Sean here before we pivot over to Tomb Raider?
Okay, so I really want to talk about the Tomb Raider release because it was so much fun, but I think I should wait on that. When you're talking about licensing, I would imagine things are much different now that you've hit the 1 million cartridge sold. You're having different conversations with these licensors. Like in the beginning, you brought in a lot of really cool companies. Namco off the hop was a great get. A lot of other cool companies. Like I said, I really love Renovation. You've done some amazing stuff now, bringing in Eidos, now it's Square. I mean, basically, that's who still owns Tomb Raider, right? Square. So
it's actually Crystal Dynamics. Is
Crystal Dynamics? Yeah.
Yeah. So they were.
And are they a division of Square? Yeah.
So Square sold Crystal Dynamics and a lot of the other people to embrace her and allow them to do that. Yeah. So Crystal Dynamics pretty much got entire autonomy out of Square Enix now. Square don't have anything to do with Tomb Raider other than what they previously released. So yeah, it's all with Square, all with Crystal Dynamics, and yeah, I mean they're a great team. It's been great working with them. It's been quite fun with all the people that are there. There's a little bit of wow, I know you from being in the gaming industry for quite a while and my own history in the games that I grew up and loved playing. So there's a lot of there's been a lot of interest on both sides on what everybody does. And yeah, the more bigger licenses you get, the more bigger numbers you post, the more interest suddenly peaks, and yeah, it just gets everywhere going. I mean, one of the things that's really made our interest peak is not even an Evercade product. It was the Super Pocket, because it allowed people to have that $50, $60 price point that people just didn't even think about it. You go and you buy it and you have a bit of fun. And when you look at it and go, it's not an arcade machine, you go, yeah, but it's in my hand that it's $50, $60 and it plays Evercade cards. So, it's great.
Yeah, that was a super smart move. Coming out with what was basically a budget device, but marketed it in such a fun way. It reminded me so much of the Play It Loud marketing campaign Nintendo did with the Game Boy. What was it? The Game Boy Pocket, right before they moved over to the color. So I love that concept. And then we look at a friend of ours, 19K Fox, who's become actually a pretty big Evercade fan now. And it's wild because he bought the Pocket, and that's what drug him in. He's also a huge Arcade 1-Up Countercade fan. He's always had Countercades and stuff. So now you're coming out with this product, and I'm like, man, you're lining up and hitting all Fox's target numbers here. This is great.
Well, I think it's one of the things that I've seen that quite a few of Fox's videos now. He's been doing quite a lot of them. I think one of the things that we've been quite clever, I guess, in a way, without blowing our own trumpet, is identifying where people are not currently within all of this retro gaming market. The one thing we notice is that most retailers, and there's a reason for that, kind of stop at $30 price point devices, which kind of limits what you can do. And we weren't in the position where we needed to present mass numbers for a retailer in order to do that. But we also knew, having done the EXP and the original handheld and everything else, what is too much money for people to pay for these kind of things. So we looked and thought, well, we can do the emulation that's needed to give somebody something different from the $30 price point, and we can do it where? And we looked, and there's that $60, £50 price point where there's a hole in the market, and it's like, well, we'll slot right in there. And I'm sure, as we'll come on to with yesterday's announcement, there's another hole in the market that is something that we're discovering.
Yeah. So I noticed some people were providing feedback that they felt you guys, because ever since your announcement came out, I've been paying attention to comments on YouTube videos, Facebook groups. There's an Evercade Reddit. One thing that I noticed, some people felt like they were a little bit inundated in the hardware options, where you have the Hyper Megatech, the EXP, you have the VS console, now this mini arcade machine coming out as well. How would you explain that to us and to the audience about why you have so many different hardware variations to play your games? Because it seemed like some people, I think, were just waiting for the next cartridge to drop, Sean. So can you just walk us through why there are so many different hardware versions of Evercade?
Well, iteration is something that happens very quickly in the retro space, as you know, from many of the handhelds and devices that are out there. And it's one of those things that it happens because if you don't iterate and you don't release stuff, then you don't end up being able to grow your user base as much as you would think. That software titles do bring in quite a lot of that interest, but unless you're releasing something that gets much more attention, you're not going to get the numbers that you kind of want to do. So the process of iteration, the process of introducing new things helps grow the company. And that's one of the reasons why hardware is one of the things that we focus on from time to time. We had a big gap last year where we didn't do any Evercade hardware at all because we were doing Super Pocket. So we know it's been quite hardware heavy this year because we were last year on it. So that's one of the reasons. Another reason with a lot of the hardware is that we wanted to bring something for everyone. When I'm saying about all of these holes in the market, you've got very little legally licensed stuff above the $60 price point where Super Pocket is. There's very little out there that is something where you don't have to run the risk of downloading a lot of terrible things or buying something with an SD card or any of those kind of things. So there isn't much when it comes to choice outside of that point. And we wanted to give something for everyone. So when we did the EXP, we knew it was going to be a premium option of something that we'd already done. Now, as we've reiterated this because of license terms and trying to re-energize the product stack, we brought it down to under $100 because we know that that's what people want. And that's where the hole in the market is for that kind of device. Same with the VS. It's now quite defined. This is a handheld. This plays on TV. And now we're going completely the other way, further up the stack to something that people have asked for since day one as well. So it's one of those things that the more hardware you have, as long as you do it in a sensible way, in that it isn't cannibalizing everything that you've got, the more choice you give to people. The more choice you give to people, the easier it is for people to understand and then get involved in some way, because they'll go, well, I really like that, but I can't get to EXPR right now. I can't afford that. The Super Pocket's got some stuff for me. I'm going to go down that route. And then other people will go, oh, well, love the arcade games. Let's go Alpha, and it's just giving people that choice without overwhelming and being clear on what you've got. And that's why there's so much hardware, really.
So here's a quick question, really quick, while it's still in my mind. I noticed with the Evercade R, which we'll talk about in a little bit, the R line, it has a very distinct color look. And if you remember the last time you were on our show, there was a YouTuber by the name of Restralgia who suggested a version of the Evercade VSR that looked exactly like that. Can you confirm or deny that this was done because Restralgia does work for your team and it was done to placate his massive ego?
I've never heard of this Restralgia person you're on about.
Me neither.
So
I want to find. Go ahead, Mike.
Follow-up question too. I really like the idea of you releasing a product and then coming out with a more cost-effective product. So you're coming out with the Evercade Alpha, and this is your initial offering. So just like you did where you're coming out with the R line now for the downsized line, and obviously that's based on Restralgia. So when you come out with your downgraded Evercade arcade console, are you going to call it the beta, also based on Restralgia?
I don't know. I'm trying to work out my Greek alphabet. I'm not sure because I'm sure whoever Restralgia is will probably say, why wouldn't you call it the Omega? Why haven't you got it?
He's definitely a beta.
Trying to have a professional interview, and here comes Michael B once again messing around.
Yeah,
there it is.
Golden Tea predictions.
Well, it was definitely going to be Golden Tea. It's a year of Golden Tea.
It is actually. I mean, in all fairness, Restralgia and us do communicate quite regularly. We've worked some projects together. This was genuinely quite accidental, as far as I know. That
you can say that. I don't believe you.
I don't believe you. It might not be. It might not be. I might be wrong, but as far as I know, the designer who's come up with the color scheme didn't have any context that this has existed or anything else. They just like the colors. So unless they just had some kind of I
can explain this. What's happened is I released this video 3 years ago, and whoever designed it happened to see this video 3 years ago. So seed planted. That's all I needed to do. I planted the seed 3 years ago, and then the rest just came to fruition. So
you planted the seed for that beard as well. I mean, looking at that thumbnail on the right hand side, it's certainly taken on.
Oh yeah, yep.
You guys are goofy.
Actually, Gene Joke here in the comments just came up with a really good comment. Well, a lot of people have been questioning the name Alpha, and I know we'll get to it later, but it's just a good time for it now. Did that have any tie-in to the fact that you were bringing the Street Fighter Alpha games to the countertop arcade? Is that one of the reasons you went with the name Alpha?
In the greatest tradition of all things marketing, that was an absolute bonus that we slid into accidentally. For the longest time, we were actually unsure what to call this thing, because there's a lot of things on the market.
Yeah,
there's a lot of things that we could have called it. We could have carried on with our sort of smaller initial things, EXP, VS, that kind of thing. And the more we thought about it, the more it was like, no, it needs to show what it's about. It needs to show something else. And we came up with some names, some very aggressive names, some less aggressive names, and then real last ditch attempt from myself one night. I just went, why don't we just call it Alpha? Because it's Alpha is in the Greek alphabet. It's the top. It is known as the best thing that you can get on of the scales of things. So we thought, well, why don't we give it that? And then went, oh yeah, there's Street Fighter Alpha on it as well. Okay, well, that's a bonus.
Perfect. Perfect.
A happy coincidence. So
So there's time. You can still change it. I've got a perfect name for it. Call it Good Countercade.
Oh, jeez. You're nuts. All right, let's continue on. So you guys recently announced a Tomb Raider, and this blew the socks off of a lot of people in the retro gaming community, because this came as a welcome surprise, at least in my opinion. And can you walk us through the Tomb Raider partnership, as well as with this game being able to run on your system? Why you now have a gigacart, which is that required in order to get this to run? And I was trying to get to Haslo's question in the live chat. Basically, between the EXP and the VS console and all that, can you confirm for us, how far up in retro gaming can you emulate on your hardware?
So We know we're already up to 64-bit. The release previous to Tomb Raider that we've just come out with was is Pico Collection 4, and on that is the N64 version of Glover, the 3D platformer that was done by the studio that was run by the Oliver twins. That came out on PlayStation. It came out on N64, and we worked on it and looked at it and realized we could do 64-bit emulation. It takes a little bit more work on the ROM and what we're doing in order to optimize it to make it work well. There's also some things that we had to make some caveats in, so a lot of the shading and stuff like that, and a lot of the fog and the kind of stuff you get that's normally that traditional 64-bit console look, we had to strip out, because that's a lot of the stuff that stops a lot of this stuff from running properly. So it is optimized to make sure that it does run on our stuff, but that possibly Dreamcast era stuff, as long as it's not too graphically taxing, is possible. The main thing really, certainly with Tomb Raider, is as long as there's nothing that's a size issue or anything else, we can do these 32-bit disc games pretty readily now, which is really, really nice. And that opens up a lot of doors, such as opening up the doors with Crystal Dynamics, because you want to go, right, well, we've done Duke Nukem, we got the deal over the line with Gearbox, we were able to talk with them, we were able to work through these things, and we were able to bring something new to that party. Crystal Dynamics were in the position that they were working on and then releasing the remasters that they've done, and they thought it would be a great time to sort of energize the brand, because they've got these things. Let's get the original ones out there. How can we do that without cannibalizing what they're trying to do? And we're in the perfect position to do that. And it's one of the things that we constantly say to a lot of our license partners is, just because we release something or you release something, it doesn't stop people buying the other one. As as retro game fans, and how many times have you bought the same copy of the same game over and over again? We did
a lot.
That's true.
We did it.
It's true. I hear a phrase where people say, "Well, I have 20 ways to play that game already." Yet we still buy it again when we find another way to play it when it gets released.
Exactly. Who's responsible for having those 20 ways to play them? Is you having purchased them in the first place, right? So,
or through nefarious methods, Sean. Acquired methods. Carl, go ahead, man. You got any questions here for Sean? I've been dominating the mic.
Oh, no problem. Tomb Raider is one of those games I think we all played. You all were enamored with it. I'm thrilled to see that. I don't recall the platforms that Tomb Raider initiated on. Was it PlayStation or was it PC? I don't recall the platform that it started on. I played hours and hours of that game growing up.
It was originally Sega Saturn, I think, was the first actual release. And then the PlayStation version and PC version came very quickly after. The Saturn, being a very difficult to develop for platform, kind of got left by the wayside, and that was also because I believe there was some deals going on with Eidos and Sony at the time, possibly. So things ended up just moving towards PlayStation and PC, and it was very, very strange, because you got the Saturn version, and that was good, but it suffered from a lot of things that the Saturn does. In fact, Digital Foundry did a great video on the differences between the PlayStation and the Saturn version, which is always well worth a watch, with John Ellerman and his team. And then you had the PC version that brought the DLC content, as we would call it now, the bonus content, the add-on. It's very difficult to remember what we used to call it back then. That kind of content. I think it was additional content, was it? Or add-on or anything else like that. But the PC players got that. The PlayStation owners didn't get that, but they got the speed of the games coming through, and they release very, very regularly, and the PC ports and the PlayStation went very well together. It was a really interesting time, because Lara Croft and Tomb Raider became a global hit, but
household name.
Yeah, she became a massive cultural icon in the UK, especially, and I think it's why a lot of people still care about the franchise very much. It's been ingrained as part of not only their growing up, but also their gaming identity of what is gaming.
Yeah, it helped that we were all like 15, 16 at the time, and she had big boobs and she was wearing little shorts. I'm just going to be honest.
I was listening to a podcast earlier, a UK podcast that were talking about the Evercade Tomb Raider collection, and the question came up: who decided on the color of the shirt? Because it's very much like you go to your grandma's and it's kind of like the worst plate in her display kind of color. But it's just an iconic little color that now, isn't it? It's just, that's now the look, and it's 1,001 cosplays and everything else.
Yeah. Well, Sean, we're gonna bring up the Evercade Alpha here in a second. We got a lot of photos and things that we want to talk about, but before we do, there's some. Go ahead, Mike.
So before we leave Tomb Raider, I just want to talk about the amazing job with the reveal. Like, that just went smooth as butter. Restralgia wrote me and he's like, get excited. There's going to be huge Evercade news in the next like half hour. And then it was announced and I was like, yeah, this was out yesterday.
Oh yeah, that did get leaked. It got leaked, or it got leaked a little bit early.
You want to tell us about that? How'd that happen, man?
Yeah.
That would be a very large retailer not paying attention to what was going on. And I think anybody that works in gaming marketing in any way, shape, or form knows the curse of the accidental leak from retailers from time to time. And it's not the first time it's happened to us. I'm sure it won't be the last either. But, you know, the problem is you need to give people enough time so that they can do all the stuff they need to do so that you guys can buy it easily. So there's always a balance between giving people the information in enough time and having the trust that they don't do that. And, you know, I mean, if anything else, it made people wonder whether it was true or not, and it got a lot more interest in it. You know, there is that old argument of all publicity is good publicity. So this is one of those cases where it very much helped. I mean, it's one of those things. You know, we spend a lot of time, as you've probably seen with the Alpha announcement, making sure that everything's right, making sure that we've got everything in the right place, making sure that we generate enough interest for the announcement in the first place so that more people can see it. And, you know, sometimes those things happen and it can completely derail people's interest. Thankfully, it was such a big title that it piqued more interest because people didn't actually believe that was a thing that could happen for Evercade. So, yeah, swings and roundabouts, as we would say in this country.
Well, I got a quick question for you before we move on from the Tomb Raider Crystal Dynamics situation. Mm-hmm. Since you guys are now in bed with Crystal Dynamics, they have a couple other interesting IPs from kind of that 32-bit era. And I'm wondering without saying any specific titles or anything, is there any potential that we're going to see some of the other IPs that they carry in their wheelhouse make their way over to the Evercade?
I will say what I believe we said on the press release for when Tomb Raider come out is that there will be more collections between Evercade and Crystal Dynamics in the future.
Okay, cool.
So that was in the
I'm not going to give all of my cards, but yes.
Okay.
So that was in the press release, and Restralgia would know due to his dealings with you.
Oh, geez. So
actually, I don't know if Restralgia would actually. I'm not going to ask him on that publicly, but, you know, we do keep our cards relatively close to our chest because, you know, there is always a possibility that something can change, you know, or anything else, and we never want to start saying, oh, hey, we got this, and then it just goes. So, you know, we always make sure that it happens at the right time.
All right. Well, guys, if you have any quick questions for Sean, do me a favor here, because when we dive into this arcade stuff, you know, us arcade nerds, we're gonna pretty much run that in the ground until the end of the show. So, any quick questions for Sean? Put them in the live chat. We'll try and get some quick answers from him. For instance, we got Retro Dude Carl Young wants to know: is light gun games possible in the future for Evercade?
They are technically possible. From the technology that is out there and available. The one hiccup with them is being able to license them and getting the right ones, because there's obviously quite a few people who own them, or should I say, not that many people that own quite a lot of the games. So it's something we'd love to do, and even if there's other ways that we can do it, we'll always try. Believe you me, I was a Point Blank fan. many coins have been lost to Point Blank or Point Break. Yeah, Point Blank. I always go Point Break, Point Blank, Point Break. And it's
Point Blank.
Which one's Keanu Reeves? Which one's the game?
Hazo here's got a great question for you, especially in regards to the Hyper Megatech Super Pocket thing. Can we put the button remapping questions to bed? It's not possible to remap buttons on the Megatech, right?
It isn't, and there is a very specific reason for that. It was far too difficult to do for that small device, because you then have to start doing a lot of going around on a small screen and doing a lot of things. And our main focus on that was we want this just to be pick up and play and be as easy as possible. And while a lot of people do want button mapping, especially people like us who I would probably class as more regular or super users of retro gaming devices, we knew we could do it on the EXP. So we kind of thought, right, well, that's more of a premium feature, but something that's more useful for that kind of audience and that kind of market. The person that we aimed the Super Pocket at, who was going to be, your dad that liked these games in the 80s and just like, I just want to play them. They wouldn't care about the button mapping. So it was just one of those things that we just went, right, well, let's get that out. It would be a lovely feature to have. And, we've had all the feedback and we can patch stuff into the Super Pocket now with our updater. So if there is a desire for it that's overwhelming, we will. And we have had feedback to have it. I wouldn't say we've had enough feedback for us to change the direction on what we're doing yet on that. So, but you never know. I'm going to say it right now because we've said it already. There will be more Super Pockets in the future. So
I've been pinning some of the really good questions. Oh, more Super Pockets in the future. Oh, yeah, I almost stepped right over that. Restralgia, did you see that? I almost stepped right over that.
It was a nice catch, though.
Because you've done a Capcom, you've done a Taito Super Pocket. So if there could be other branded Super Pockets coming out, is what you're saying.
I would say you would be wise to bet on that.
Okay. This has been one of the biggest questions. It was one of the biggest questions when you originally had the Capcom games come out on the EXP. And now with the addition of these Capcom licensed mini arcade machines, the audience is clamoring for Capcom cartridges. Sean, tell me that we're going to see that in the future. I think because if I understand this correctly, I'm going to have to buy both of these mini arcade machines to play these games. Unless, are you going to sell a separate cartridge of games to play?
So there's no plans at the moment for cartridges for the games that are included on Alpha or the games that were released on the EXP for those bonus titles. It is very much a thing that we would love to do. We would love to bring everything that we can to cartridges, and a lot of the deals that we're trying to work out with new license partners have that as the thing that we want to do. It's one of those things that Capcom as a license partner don't want to do at this stage, and we have to respect that. They're a big publisher, and there is the argument to say, if you don't have somebody like Capcom, does it harm your business not having it? So we've always been of the opinion that having Capcom along as a partner in whichever way we can do it is the most preferential thing. And we know it's not our normal MO with Evercade, and we know we want to do cartridges, and hopefully at some point we'll be able to convince them and other partners around that we can do that. The more successes that we have in a lot of this stuff, hopefully the more likely it will be.
We'll talk a little bit more here, Ritual Dello, about online gameplay when we talk about the Evercade Alpha right here. But real quick, James hates everything. He's got another quick one for you, Sean. Indie NES games like Garbage Pail Kids or Rugrats possible?
Everything's possible as long as everybody's happy and willing to talk and has the right ownership for these things. A lot of the things that we're buoyed with, especially with that last title with Rugrats, is that there are Rugrats collections beginning to appear. So it suggests that the licensing and the talks are available to be had. So never say never. It's all possible.
Carl, you want to take care of this question for him?
Mm-hmm.
What do we got here?
Which question?
That's okay. I got it on the screen.
You're asking me to?
It's okay,
Carl.
Carl. You'll get it.
It's okay.
What year is it, Carl?
Well, so for instance, Carl, there's a big part of the Evercade Alpha that we're going to talk about handles and batteries, man. And trust me, Detroit Love, you are going to be the star of that segment. If anyone remembers Carl's battery mods and his handle mods on his countercades, I can't wait to see what he comes up with for the Evercade Alpha. But Frank D wants to know if you're going to be able to do USB receiver dongle controllers for the VS or even the Alpha.
So at the moment, we've got a lot of third-party support with dongle-based stuff. The 8-bit though arcade sticks and their various controllers all work with Evercade devices on the VS. The same is going to be for the Alpha. Us ourselves, we have considered it, but I think the desire for it isn't as. There's people that want it, but also the desire for it isn't big enough for us to justify running a large quantity of the controllers in order to sell them. You know, it's there are, I mean, our controllers, we love them, you know, they're very basic, they're a great intro retro controller, but a lot of the people that do want Bluetooth or have Bluetooth have a preferred way to do it at the moment, so we've never really gone for it. The designs exists, you know, everything that we sort of looked it up to see whether we could do it, so for us to be able to do it is possible. It's just whether it's really worth doing at this stage when everybody's got their own ways of playing. So it's something that we keep checking. This
is a really good question. I have a follow-up for this too. So is there any more Namco carts coming out in the future?
There's none initially planned at the moment, but again, like I say, we are always having these conversations. We're always keeping the doors open, and you know, Namco is one of those license partners that also keeps the doors open. As you know, Namco are a company that license many things to many people. They'll release their own things. Things will change. The thoughts of what they want to do in a particular year will suit us sometimes. Sometimes they won't. So again, it's one of those never say never. It's one of those things that, you know, right place, right time, it will happen.
Yeah, so it was one of my moments that when I got my VS, I was a little sad about, because I pulled out my little Namco collection cart and I was like, all right, jazzed up to play this on the TV. So I plug it in and it's like, sorry, the Namco collection won't work on the VS. So was that a licensing thing where it was only licensed to work on the original Evercade and then it wasn't updated? Is there anything you can tell us about that? Or is that, that's licensing? Yeah. So it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, we've been pretty open about that it was a licensing thing. We don't obviously normally talk about business or contracts, but the Namco contract was very specific to what we originally created.
Yeah.
So when it came to it being a device that, you know, is a TV console, it was basically objected to. So we had to do that. We tried. We've taught to say, hey, can we get it? You know, can we put it on these things? Can we put it on that? And the answer was, sadly, we weren't able to get that over the line. Since then, you know, the cartridges are now out of print. So if you got them, great. If not, then I'm sure they're out there somewhere. But we're not as beholden to those kind of things right now. Yeah. So, you know, they work on all the handhelds. There is an argument to say that the Evercade Alpha does not plug into a TV, therefore is a self-contained unit, much like a handheld. So to answer the question that's probably going to come, I'm sure you'll be able to put them into the Evercade Alphas successfully.
Ooh, there we go.
Okay, good. So let's get into this Evercade Alpha. And Sean, I'm gonna just kick it off here. I'm gonna throw a hot potato at you. I'm just gonna rip the Band-Aid off. So why did Evercade decide to make a home arcade or like a mini tabletop arcade console? And on top of that, our audience is clamoring for larger arcade machines, like 3/4 scale or bigger. What's the potential that we see that coming down the line in the future from Evercade as well? So 2 hot potatoes, 2 of the biggest questions. Go ahead, my friend.
Yeah. Well, the answer to the first question is we obviously massively hate ourselves and want to give ourselves the biggest headaches in the world possible.
Right.
No, I mean, it's one of those things that what comes next You know, when you've got this line, when you've got the stuff that we've got, you have to ask yourself when you're developing the products, what's next? Because if other than going down the scale like we did with Hyper Megatech to bring a more value product, the only other way you can go is up. So the price goes up, the quality of the thing goes up, and you go, we've just released a handheld, we just released another handheld. Why would we release something else? You know, what can we do in this space that's, you know, different or unique? As you guys have talked about regularly, you know, the space for home arcade market has been rapidly changing over the last 18 months or so. There are companies that are no longer with us. There are more refinements in the lines. You know, the price of a lot of the stuff has gone up. There's been a lot of change, and we looked at that and thought, well, we've got something unique in anything that we do, which is the Evercade cartridge slot. You know, we've got the ability to expand, for people to collect, for people to do all of those things. So it's always been on the cards, you know, that this kind of device, this bar top arcade, as we're calling it, is possible. So it just became that this was the time that we pulled the trigger on it, really. One day maybe we will do a larger scale. It's certainly something that we've thought about. Certainly something we've probably got some drawings of somewhere. One of the things that's worth considering as well is where our core markets are. We're a UK company. Our strongest market is the UK and the EU. America is a growing market, and you know, this kind of product is great for America because of the connection that there is to arcade in America. It's much stronger than it is in Europe and the UK. But in Europe and the UK, we are kind of beholden to house sizes. I used to work for a PC company, and I used to have to sell routers, and I know pretty much almost off the top of my head what the square footage is of the average household in most of the countries. And to say that the US size of house is at least 10 times more is almost generous.
Really?
Yeah,
really.
Because of the space that we've got. So a smaller device works for that part of the market, and it also makes it a lot easier for us to hone and do something, because, you know, at the moment there's a lot of things that are going on in the world, logistics costs of components, costs of different things, and the bigger you get, especially if it's the first time, you know, you don't want to take that risk. So we've gone down the smaller route for now. It was, like I say, it was always something that we were thinking about. So
if the UK audience prefers smaller machines, is there any chance us spoiled fat Americans can get the larger machines? Is that possible?
Or us spoiled fat Canadians?
maybe in future. I mean, it's going to be one of those things that we'll see how this does for starters. Yeah, you know, the feedback so far, I mean, from your guys' videos, from the press and everybody out there on YouTube, has been great. You know, the Evercade community has also been great. There's been some vocal talk about whether it's for people or not, and you know, like I say, we want to provide something for everyone. So this is the next step for what we have available, and you know.
Yeah, but some of that talk is from assholes that actually don't think anything's for anybody unless it's a GRS product, so I wouldn't really worry about it. Anyways, I did want to bring this up too. I find this really funny that
good, it was meant to be a good joke.
Yeah, you guys aren't afraid to take shots here. Look at the Game Over arcade. So you're talking about a gap in the retail space. And I look at this as a clear sign joke, or a clear sign that you're saying, yeah, we're here to compete. Arcade 1-Up has obviously been known as the main force when it comes to these recreation arcade type designs. You guys are, basically coming right out there and saying, well, there's a new person here in town, if I can ever get this video to play, taking out the Game Over arcade, and boom, there comes your Evercade Alpha. So, I mean, this is basically a competitor, if not better version, I would call it, of the countercade. I mean, you look at these are beautiful. They've got the beautiful light up marquees, your cartridge slots down here. You're coming out and saying this is going to have an IPS screen, which is miles above like what Arcade 1-Up does with the countercades. Now, you're talking competition controls. I'm going to ask you for clarification on competition controls, because what does that exactly mean? I know these aren't SAMWA because the deluxe models are going to have SAMWA controls, but what are competition controls?
So to answer the first question on that, there's a lot of people out there that do stuff within the home arcade market, whether it's a lower cost, whether it's the same kind of cost as our bar top size and things like that. And nobody ever made any noise whispering. There's a lot of people like yourselves out there. You would find the news if it came out and we said we were doing an arcade eventually, then there would be some interest. But, we wanted to make an announcement. We wanted to show that we were out there. And yes, it's slightly aggressive. It's not in a malice way or anything else like that. It's one of those things that, the market has opened up to allow for some more competition. So it's being able to sort of go in there and look at what's available and bring what we bring to the party into this product, made it a lot more sensible for us to go, right, well, here we are, let's establish ourselves. One of the things that we're very well respected for is the quality of our emulation, which we really try to put a lot of effort on. So even though we've got 6 games per device, those 6 games are going to run as best as you can probably get for this price point. The carts that you're going to put in and the games that they have, the emulation is going to run as best as it can for that price point for what you're playing. The competition grade controls, yes, competition grade is of course partly a marketing term, but they are effectively as close to SAMWA as you can get without being SAMWA.
So they're the really good clones, not the clones we've seen in some of these other home arcades before.
They're really good.
Yeah, it's one of those things that we want to look at what's in the market and we want to offer something that's either new, good, different, a unique thing. And one of the big thing obviously is the Evercade cartridge slots. But if you don't know about Evercade, and a lot of the people within the home arcade market might not know about Evercade, so then how do we win these people? Let's give them stuff that they either want and don't get at the moment, or something that they haven't even thought about that they can get. There's obviously a lot of this official styling, which we know people love in the US, and certainly when it comes to the EU and the UK, we love doing things for that. But everybody loves a bit of customization. That's why we've got the swappable marquee panels for the light up marquee, so you can put something new on there, make it a little bit cooler, make it a little bit changed. And I'm sure the Etsy crowd are going to go mad with that once they work out the size and dimensions of it all. We want to be able to give something just a little bit further up in quality than what people may expect at this price point. So stereo speakers, the IPS high resolution panel, so you get better viewing angles and a lot of that stuff, especially if you're going to play 2-player. You're always probably at 45-degree angle to that screen, so you want to have good viewing angles on that. USB-C power with a plug included, and I will very much hammer that point home. The plug is included. Previously, we haven't really included plugs in a lot of our stuff because it's been too much of a pain, but for this, you have to. So it's an international plug, so that's all there with that. And these arcade controls, we're calling them competition grade because they're as close to SAMWA as can be. We know a lot of people that will professionally play fighting games.
It's like how we call Restralgia the great value version of ETA Prime. He's the Restralgia.
He's the competition.
Restralgia's the competition grade ETA Prime. So that's what you're telling us, Sean. So we greatly appreciate that.
It's an honor, boys. It's an honor.
I'm gonna ask you about your stereo speakers. So are these new stereo speakers or what you've used previously in like the Evercade consoles? The Evercade handhelds.
They're new because they're bigger.
They're bigger? Okay.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I mean, the scale of this thing probably isn't as clear from the thing that we've done. It's about, I think it works out about just over 16 inches. It's just under half a meter, 410 millimeters tall. So it's like the kind of established size that you have for something in this price point. So the speakers are slightly larger than you would get on the handheld, for example.
Okay. So some of the feedback we got now, Sean, I do have to ask you some of the tough questions. So, for instance, these countercades are not linkable, so you can't like connect them and have like two countercades side by side and play. You can play 2-player by plugging in controllers, but it's going to be kind of hard to play 2-player on an 8-inch screen. I mean, some of us are big guys. I mean, take a look at me and Michael B. We're just massive dudes and crowding around.
That's half the fun, though, right? So like when you used to play these games at the arcade in the originals, surely you were elbowing and doing stuff to put the other person off.
But with your countercades having the ability to have Wi-Fi connection, because system updates are going to be needed to run cartridges now and later that you'll release. What about doing online play? Why wasn't online play? Did you guys look at it and it just wasn't feasible? Or is it something that can come later? Can we do online play?
So to answer the first point of the first question, one of the things that we discovered through all of our research with Evercade over the 4 years is how people play. The VS is a multiplayer console, but we still know that most people will play single player. That's whether they want to or not. There's some people that do play more conversely, they'll have it as like a bar top arcade in their game rooms and stuff like that. And obviously that's on a big screen, but a lot of people are still quite close. They're still huddling around where they are. And most of the time when you do that, you're not playing on a big, 50-inch TV or further up. You're normally playing on like a 32-inch monitor or smaller. So, we know people do play 2 players in a much more confined space. Obviously, the size of the unit gives that size constraints. So that's why we allow the 2-player on that. And most people do play single player. So the main original focus is obviously, of course, playing on the sticks, looking at the thing and doing it. And then, if you do want to play 2-player and some Street Fighter against your friends, you can. On the online front, the plan is not to bring online gameplay at this stage. A couple of legal reasons for that. There's a different license that you would need to do in order to get that from the publishers in order to do all those things. And that's not just the games that will be built in. That will be all of the stuff that we've done previously that we'd have to get relicensed for online play. So that would always be a tricky one. We then also have to put in the infrastructure. We'd have to make sure that everything's there and put a lot of the stuff in. And, we are a growing company. We're probably not at the size where it's instantly feasible to do that without a lot of work and investment. And when you sort of have to look at what you do you do the investment in the games, or do you do the investment on a feature? And a feature like that, and there are many other features that we could do with the time that and resource that you'd have to spend on something like online gaming. So it depends. It's one of those things that it always comes up. Even now, can we play online? Again, it doesn't come up enough for us to go, we have to do it.
So if you take a look at what Arcade 1-Up does with their online leaderboards and all that stuff, you'll get a loud portion of the community saying, we want spectate, we want online. But then when you turn around after people demand all those things, it seems like the uptake on it is really limited. And while it is a selling feature, I just don't know sometimes if the online component, if the juice is worth the squeeze. So, I mean, you got to take that into consideration when you're going to invest that kind of money and develop that kind of infrastructure for how many people's actually going to use this? What are you hoping to have? 20 people maybe playing online at once? Is it worth it?
I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, one of the things that when I was a video game journalist, that horrible, dirty word, I reviewed OnLive, which was basically a cloud streaming thing where you would play your game through TV through a little box. And one of the cool things that it did have was a spectator mode. Yeah. You could drop into people's games and just watch them play. And, nowadays that's Twitch, that's YouTube, that's that thing. But, as a feature on a device, it is there, and I'm sure with other devices that have those things, you'll get that initial spike, and then it will just drop down. And you think, well, has it helped us to improve the experience? Is it used quite a lot? Was it worth the time? Could we have spent the time and money we've done that to bring something else that people want to do? So you are right. It's one of those things that everybody will ask for all of the features that they can, and every feature is important to everybody in their own equal measure. The one thing we always have to say with that is, we will listen to all the feedback. We'll see what we can do. We'll be always honest and talkative to everybody. We're a very open company when it comes to what our limitations are on a lot of this stuff, and what the technical, money, license, resource issues are for all of those things. So, yeah, I mean, all of these things will come from, I'm sure leaderboards will be mentioned by people wanting stuff. It's things that we always look at, how can we do it? How can we do it in a simple way? How can we do it in a very difficult technical way? Which is the best way to do it? Is it even worth doing it? It's one of those things you sort of have to balance, and then you have to go, right, well, if we're going to do it, then we'll commit to it. And we'll always be.
Well, Sean, I don't want to get you all charged up, but I do have to ask the question regarding rechargeable battery.
Yes.
Now you've made it clear that in your country, you guys are 1/10 scale in the housing, so there's probably a plug closer to wherever you place is at. But in our bigger homes here, my problem always comes, one, just having counter space to begin with, because my house, they always clutter up every counter space here. But to find the counter space, and then to have a plug accessible in that space is always a dilemma for me, which makes these type of things harder for me to decide on buying them. And having it rechargeable obviously makes that, erases those problems. But what was the decision on deciding not to have a rechargeable battery?
I'll be honest, having a battery really didn't come into the conversation with this, purely because of the power demands of the unit. It's a big unit. For you to have any kind of length of play battery rise for what we would put in there, it adds weight to the unit, which then adds potential more cost for things like shipping, logistics, a lot of those kind of things as well. With a lot of the laws that we've got coming through at the moment, there may be a requirement to have that as a replaceable battery. So we have to build things into it in order to make it changeable and things like that.
Yep.
On our minds to battery products. And again, maybe there's a UK folk thing that we have an easier time with main supply and position of main supply. I mean, a lot of people also don't in this country. A lot of our houses are quite old, so we do have a lot of issues with it as well. But it's always been sort of thought for us as this kind of, not exactly, I say portable, but not exactly something that you would just have with a rechargeable battery and just use it and then put it back. And if you are having something like this, that you're investing the $220 into, or £250 for the deluxe edition, if you're only going to get 3 to 4 hours play out of it, because light up marquee, speakers, running the carts, the memory, the screen, you're probably going to feel a little bit shortchanged if it dies after 3-4 hours, depending on what you do. So it's just, in some ways, it's not worth having that potential negative experience on part of your product. I do appreciate where you're coming from with your situation with it. But yeah, that's why we went down that way.
And Carl, he didn't want to say this, but technically they did it for you, because we all know you're going to make a video putting a rechargeable battery in the Evercade Alpha. Yeah. So this is to your benefit. If it had one, you're losing thousands upon thousands of views. This is for you.
Yeah, Carl, and what I think they're doing as well is they're giving you like a lot of runway here, so you can make a video on how to add a battery, but if you wanted to take it to the next level, you could show people how to run it off of a generator or something.
That's stupid.
Yeah, make sure it's not a petrol generator inside or a gas generator inside. Just don't do that, please. Don't want any asphyxiation going on.
I also wanted. I understand you don't have, you have the on off button, but you kind of made it look like the coin up. The coloring scheme. I like that aspect, even though it doesn't say, insert quarter, that type of thing. It says on and off, but I like the idea that you kind of put a coin button there.
Yeah, it's one of the things that, being able to do this kind of form factor enables us really to sort of have a little bit of a play that we haven't been able to do before. And we've always been a little bit playful in some of our designs. The VS, when that first came out, everybody went, "Oh, look at this flap on the top. Isn't that very reminiscent of an 80s console of some description?" We've always had certain nods. And, one thing that's always been on our mind when it comes to arcade, when we've been doing the game collections, the cart collections, and all these things, is what people's memories are. Everything about the arcade, especially for people in America, is very tactile. It's the sounds, it's the smells, it's the memory of sticky floors because people will spill Coke all over them or something like that. It's cigarette butts on the top of the things. It's chewing gums underneath the unit, and going, my hands, and things like that. And being able to just bring little touches that give that kind of positive nostalgic feel. The button looking like the coin slot, the cartridge slots looking like the coin eject slot that you get as well. It's all a way to try and make it feel more like the arcade.
So, Sean, a lot of the EXP and the VS, you guys have different screen filtering options, things like that. Are we going to see the ability to do scan lines on the arcade machine and things like that, as well as dip settings, dip switch functions? Is all that going to be there like it is on your other hardware?
So one of the things that we are doing with our other hardware at the moment is we're kind of unifying all of our user interface, the look, the style, the feel, and also the feature sets that they can provide. Mainly is so it's easier for us so that we don't have to do 4 different bits of firmware every time. We can do one kind of thing and deliver it to each device. So when it comes to the Alpha, it will have the same kind of features that we have on the VS at the moment for, aspect ratio, scan line.
Nice.
Which we have strong subtle scan lines. It will be very similar to that. Dip switches is something that we have been looking at in general, not just on Alpha, but for all of our carts and our arcade carts, and bringing that feature in. It's one of those work in progress. It's something that we want to make sure is right before we get it out, because we want to make sure that the experience is good and that it doesn't break everything, especially when it comes to a lot of arcade games. You never know what engineers have put in what particular bit that isn't meant to be seen with a certain dip switch setting or things like that. So, you got to be careful with it, and you've also got to make sure you're not breaking the game for people playing it. So it requires a lot of work, a lot of testing per game, but it is something we're looking at for sure.
Now, before I have you tell me why customers should consider purchasing this product, I do have one other why question that I have to ask you, because we have to, make sure that the viewers and people out there are taken care of. Why was no HDMI out included? That seems to be a big touching point for a lot of people who I saw commenting on my own video, because the ability to either plug this into a TV, maybe play it on the TV, or B, being able to stream or live stream or capture footage, etc. Why no HDMI out?
Yeah, so also in my video that came out 1 minute before PDubs, I thought it was a strange exclusion that there was no HDMI out. I just wanted to say that in my video that came out 1 minute before PDubs.
And Sean, I just wanted to say I didn't make a video because it's summertime and he's gone. What happened? See, you
stop.
No. There we go. Am I back?
You're back now, buddy.
Yeah, Sean, I just want to add to that. When you made the point earlier that in most scenarios it would be one person playing, right? And that's why you didn't have the the leaderboard or the online play, because one person be playing. But because when I see a product like this, I initially envision this sitting on your bar, right? Most of those guys have a bar, and we usually have a TV watching the game or whatever the case. And in a one-person scenario, you can sit there and you play it. But if two players, which are controller, it would be ideal to have that big screen TV that you can pop that on and be able to play the dual player as opposed to trying to watch the smaller screen. So I think where most guys are going to come from.
Yeah,
I mean, certainly from the Evercade hardware point of view, we have a product that does that already with the VS. You know, it is this is how you play on TV device.
Okay.
It goes to 1080p. It's quite small. It can go under things. So there's always that. But the other thing with this, you know, we looked at what was available in the space, what then adds cost onto the unit when we're developing it, and having HDMI out basically added too much cost for what we wanted to do. There's a lot of things that come with adding HDMI on a lot of these things. You know, you have to end up having something that disables the screen on the unit in order to process that out. You then have to think about, right, do we include a cable in the box with this as well if we're going to offer HDMI? And there's a lot of these different things that end up either adding weight, adding cost, adding complexity into the programming, a lot of different things. And in honesty, it's quite established in this space at the moment that there isn't HDMI mounts on a lot of these products, certainly on the bar top kind of level. It could have been something that we went, right, well, that will be a big feature for some people. But again, we wanted this experience to be like an arcade and like that kind of feeling. So, yeah, it was just one of those things that then didn't make it to the table.
Now I have a question regarding you mentioned, and it's nice that you made the cartridge slots look like a coin return, pretty neat. But why dual ports? And when you talk about cost, and eliminating cost, is it just aesthetic? You thought it looked better, or just what's the thinking?
It's a bit of both. So we have form on this. The Evercade VS has dual cartridge slots. The main idea behind that is, you had a handheld, and on a handheld size thing, you have a cartridge slot, and that makes sense because of the size of the device. When it came to the VS, we said, what can we do to add something else a little bit more? What we decided was let's put another cartridge slot on there, because it gives us two possibilities here, which is, you can have more games on the screen at any one time. A lot of the times we've got two or more collections from the same publisher. So, for example, when we had the Atari 1 and Atari 2, you could put them both in and you'd have 40 Atari games to play rather than just 20. So, it enabled more choice immediately there at the time. The other thing we were able to do was add a couple of neat little bonuses because of it. So some of our game cartridges have a bonus title if you own both of them. And if you put them both in, they will unlock. And we kind of had that established for non-handheld devices with the VS, so we just carried on going with it.
Okay. Yeah, so this product is going to go up for pre-order. Is it next week? Already?
Tuesday. Yeah, Tuesday.
Wow.
And it's going to be you're going to do a pre-order price of $229 for each individual arcade. I have two questions. Number one, will you have a bundle? Let's just say if someone wanted to buy both. I see from what I'm looking at, like for myself, I probably would only need or want to buy one. But if someone wanted to get both, is there going to be a bundle pricing? And the other question I have is, what is driving the price to be, even when this pre-sale ends, it's going to be around the $250 range. And there's been some concerns in the community with the pricing. Some of these countercades that we've seen before in this particular home arcade market of similar size, they're usually, less than 200. So maybe if you could kind of just walk us through the pricing challenges, I think that'll help.
Yeah, I want to know specifically what your pricing model was on this.
Well, the first point is with the introductory price on the standard editions of these Evercade Alpha units. They're available at retailers all over the world. So it's not just our partner retailer Funstock. Amazon, VGP, maybe some others in the US may well stock it and things like that. So we traditionally don't offer a bundle ourselves to those retailers, but if the retailers decide to do it, they are more than welcome to. So that's up to them. I mean, the main problem is if you're going to do a bundle of anything like that, it's going to be shipping. So there is that with that. The only thing that we kind of had a little bit more control over was the deluxe editions, which are at a slightly higher price and have the soundbar controls upgraded. It comes with a exclusive controller, more marquees, so we give you quite a bit of extras with it, and that comes from Funstock directly. So that's the only thing that we've had control over as a bundle option, because we thought rather than bundle 2 units together, we should just make the 1 unit a good bundle of stuff, and things that are sensible upgrades that people who are real enthusiasts would like and appreciate. So things like the soundbar controls, things like having a controller out of the box, things like having more choice of customization with those marquees, and obviously the benefit for you guys over there is that we're actually going to get Funstock to distribute anything that you buy there for these deluxe editions in the States. So that should hopefully help with clearance, customs, shipping, a lot of the stuff like that.
Well, it'll help me and Carl, but poor Michael B and Restralgia are still going to be.
It will help you a little bit. It will help you a little bit.
Yeah,
in Canada, Sean.
I know too many Canadians that I can't make too many jokes. The other part of that question,
the second question, just to reiterate for the audience, is what is driving the price? Because Sean, some people have had some sticker shock. This looks like a fun product. You have to admit, you got some nice licenses. You got the Street Fighter Alpha series officially licensed. First time we're seeing that officially released on a commercial home arcade product. And you also have the ability to plug in your cartridges and play more games. But for some reason, I've seen a lot of sticker shock about this price tag. But what are your thoughts there on what's driving this?
So the price we've always done and always looked at as to what is competitive for the market of which it is in. And certainly in the US, that's quite difficult because the price of what has been available is varied wildly depending on who sells it, at what point of that thing's life cycle it sells at. There have been some very aggressive discounts on a lot of the stock that has been out there. And the problem is that when that continually happens and you try to push a lot of that stock through, people get used to that. It's the same case with, something like Prime shipping. People go, well, why can't I get free shipping? And so because everything that takes to deliver that stuff to you costs petrol, it costs human resource, it costs maintenance on the van, it costs, all of these things. So there's kind of been like that slight false economy of what people's expectations are as to what actually happens with a lot of this stuff. With our unit, we're looking at the components we're using compared to things that are already in the market at around about this price. They are better components, we believe, than what is on there. So that's why the cost of it is a little bit more. The build quality is a bit better than a lot of those we believe from everything that we got going there. So it means, you do pay a bit more of a premium for that. For us as well, being a smaller company, we have to also look at the logistics for us of making this product, getting it from where it is to where it's at. That's not as so much of a we're passing on the cost to you kind of thing, but that all gets factored into what this stuff is. For us, there was probably ways that we could have done this cheaper, but then what's the point in doing it?
Do it right or don't do it at all. Yeah, I agree. So what you're saying is your pricing model was above competition pricing. That's what you went with. So slightly above Arcade 1-Up to show the quality. You didn't go with prestige pricing. That would have been way too high. That would have been like $400 or $500.
There's also a thing in this as well that we know the pricing is over what we've normally done. Evercade has been a value aesthetic for a lot of people for quite a while. Our cartridges are still $20. That hasn't changed apart from the one bit here or there, like the Giga Cart or anything else. You know, the value in what you get with Evercade is the ability to continue that experience with all the more games and everything else at a price point that's acceptable. So, you know, if you were to have, you know, a standard bar top arcade situation and you had those 3 or 4 games, you know, we are adding, as you say, 6 games, you know, that's that adds to the cost as well, because we're putting more in than you would normally get with these kind of units. You just stop there and you think, okay, well, if I want to play something else, am I going to have to get another unit that costs $170, $180? No, you just have to get a cart that costs 20. And, you know, you suddenly look at it and you just go, right, well, then maybe I am paying slightly more than I would do for a competitive priced thing, but I'm getting much more availability, much more premium, and much more choice for much less.
So I think
I would agree there as well. You know, we like to mod. A lot of people like to mod and personalize it. I think you guys, those 2 factors, allowing the marquee to be swapped out, I think that's brilliant. That just eliminates the cost of someone having to put their favorite game as the marquee title. But also the next thing for people, especially when you have limited space, limited counter space, I'm only going to be able to have one of these cartridges or one of these cabinets to be able to buy cartridges, because that's always the next thing. How do I add the game that I want to play outside of these games that come stock? So I think those 2 factors, it checks the box for a lot of people that's looking to get this thing in their home.
So another thing
sorry, Mike, I was going to say, that's the other thing that this adds is convenience. You know, when you are modding units and doing a lot of these kind of things, my camera's just decided to disappear.
Oh no!
There we go.
We can still hear you though.
There you go.
Yeah, convenience is one of the key things of this. You know what we? Oh wow. Okay, there we go.
You have it on the timer?
I've got an external camera in, but I've also got a laptop camera that decides sometimes it's going to work and sometimes it doesn't, and it just boots. Convenience, right? So if you are going to, I mean, a lot of people do this in this country. For example, they'll get a cabinet on a deal, they'll gut it, they'll rip everything out of it, they'll put what they want to put in there, possibly something like a Raspberry Pi or something else. You then spend ages customizing those things, because, you know, arcade games, even though you get a set and, you know, most of them do kind of work, you do have to do some things here and there to make them all work and do stuff like that. One of the things with Evercade is you don't have to worry about that. You know, this is come pre-assembled. It's got better components than what you would expect. You don't have to start gutting it or doing things. The games work. We've done all the hard work when it comes to optimization, good emulation, putting them all on the thing, ownership of them legally. You know, there is a convenience aspect to this, that you're not having to spend time, energy, and money to make this as good as it can be. You know, it's coming to you in the best that we are able to do and bring it. And the convenience of just sticking in a cart, having those games pop up, and you being able to play them without having to, you know, folder them, go through, make sure that you've got the right things on and in your settings and stuff. You know, we just bring that to the party as well, which is completely different and alien to a lot of this kind of area.
So I just wanted to jump in a couple points. Ferbs had mentioned earlier, too bad they're not available on Amazon Canada. That's a fallacy. I want to make sure that's corrected. Yes, all Evercade products are available on Amazon Canada. I bought the Duke Nukem Collection 1 tonight while we were on the show through Amazon Canada. So yes, they are available. The other thing too is I'm giving you a hard time about the price point on this, but I do want to just make a very good point on the price point, that you can't compare this directly to like a competitor's product. There's only one competitor's product in the space, and that's the Arcade 1-Up Counter Arcade, because this is also a very different machine. While it does have the art, it is a recreation arcade. This is a console. This has a bunch of different things. This has Wi-Fi included. It's more of an Evercade console itself than it is just, you know, one of those recreation arcades. So it's not exactly the same. While it may look like it, it's not 100% exactly the same. So just those points.
You were saying giving me a hard time there. Don't know. That's a great time. Thank you for that. You took the words out of my mouth.
Okay.
Yeah. But no, you're right. You know, the look and feel is something that is established in the market of what this is. You know, people want a home arcade that reminds them of the stuff that they liked, and that's why we have these officially licensed designs. They're not replicas, they are officially licensed, so we've gone as close as we can to a replica or homage to certain things because they didn't exist. But for a lot of us, a lot of arcade cabinets were just black with a marquee. There wasn't that kind of thing. So bringing that visual look is something that's kind of necessary for this market, because that's what is established and that's what's there. At the same time, you're right. Visually, yes, that looks like an arcade cabinet like you would have, but it's an Evercade. You're getting all of the benefits, all of the technical features, all of the support, the game of the month stuff, the access then to be able to expand your selection with the over 500 plus games that we got on these cartridges now. And it's not just arcade. You're going to be able to play C64 games on this thing. You're going to be able to play Tomb Raider.
You want to, though? You, really want to. You Europeans and your Commodore 64, it just confuses me.
All right, I got a question for you, Sean. How hard was it to get Capcom to give you the Street Fighter Alpha series license? Because this is something we've been waiting to see happen from some other companies in this space. How did that get put on the table? Because that was a very big win, in my opinion, for this product.
Like I've said, in the way that we've designed this product, we want to do something that isn't the norm on this thing, because if we were going to do the same things that everybody else does, there's no point doing it. And it is painfully clear and obvious, Alpha 2, Alpha 3 hadn't been seen on these things. Mega Man, Power Battle, and Power Fighters, I think, were on this TV-like thing that was exclusive to Japan and maybe a couple of other things, but otherwise also haven't been in this form factor. So I'll be honest, we asked a question.
You just asked.
We just said, here are the games that we would like. And, you go through this process of going, what games are available? Here are the games that we would like. And then when we were looking at this stuff, we go, right, well, let's actually make sure that we can run these games. Because, Alpha 3, it's not way into the future of Street Fighter that, it's impossible to emulate on these things. But, it's still a further thing than a lot of the Street Fighter games and stuff that you would get on these kind of devices. So we made sure we could run it. We asked if it was available. And here we are. I know that sounds like a really simplistic answer to what you think might be probably a much more complex thing.
Well, Sean, I hate to sound, kind of funny about it, but some of these companies make it seem impossible to bring newer games or different licenses to this particular market space. And you're telling me you just went in there and said and just asked, "Hey, can we have this game?" And they gave it to you.
Yeah,
there were reasons. It blows my mind.
Well, they didn't just give it to him; they made him put Puzzle Fighter on this thing. There was obviously some concessions.
You got to take Puzzle Fighter, though. Somebody, please take Puzzle Fighter.
One of the things that's sort of been in this space, and this space is kind of, let's say this space has existed for what, 7-8 years now at this point.
Yeah.
From different things. One of the things that we sort of know, and looking at this, is what does and does not get the interest of people. And if you're looking at a much more mass market, for example, you're going to want to do things that people absolutely recognize 100%. And that's why, you're going to get, more Pac-Man than you probably expect across a various amount of devices, not just this, all the way down to the $10, $15, $20, $30 price points, to key rings, to everything else. You get the things that are the established stuff, and that's the things that sell. With us, because we're much more niche, I guess, when it comes to where our market space is, there's a lot of people that love us, and 1 million cart sales, as we said at the beginning of this, is absolutely nothing to sniff at. But we are still within a certain part of the space, and that enables us a little bit more freedom to go. We can take the risk of putting these games on there because we know the people that we're aiming at want these things and will be able to do it, and we're in a position that it doesn't cost us too much in what we have to produce in order to get it there. And then the main thing is, at the end of this, can we do it well? And we realize we can, because there's no point doing it if you can't do it well.
So Before I'm going to turn the mic over to Restralgia because I know he's got some great questions for you. But before I do, I do have one final question. If these are successful, let's just say you put these things up for pre-order next week, and over the next few months, pre-orders come in, they do well. These are going to be shipping, guys, by November is when they're expected to hopefully ship. Fingers crossed, no delays. If these are successful, would we see other mini arcades? And I'm going to ask you again. Let's just say it's super successful. Would we see potentially a larger form factor arcade like this?
It's possible. It's very, very possible. You know, it's always been part of the thought process of, you know, how far do we scale something like this up? Mm-hmm. You know, not just amounts, not just potential licenses in the future outside of what we got here, but, you know, the size of the units and stuff. You know, until you put something out there, you're never really going to know what the demand is. You can do market research, you can see what's out there, and then, I mean, let's face it, you know, as we said earlier, this space has changed dramatically in the last 18 months. Sure, there's enough market research out there to say, don't do this. You know, companies that have come and gone, there are products that have come and gone, there are licenses that have come and gone, and, you know, the space can be volatile. But because, you know, you have to keep things moving, keep things flowing. So
right.
For us to do this, basically, you know, I mean, we didn't know. I mean, we have a lot of predictions. We have a lot of, you know, research and thought processes, and we kind of worked out what every scenario would be come Thursday when we announced this. You know, I had everything prepared for every single eventuality of what people would think about this thing, and as we got towards it, we began how interested people were in this, you know, from people that we shared with it before under an NDA, people that we'd asked their advice, people that we'd asked different things, you know, it became clear that actually we were onto something with this. And, you know, for the rest of the year, if the public and the paying public are thinking of this as well, then we'll go, right, well, we'll hear the feedback. We've always listened to feedback of what people want and what the size of what people want. So I mean, it's one of the reasons the EXP exists is because of direct feedback from the original handheld that we made. You know, a lot of the things that are on that EXP are direct improvements on those things.
So I just want to make sure the audience's feedback, since Sean is here, guys, if you're interested in a, let's just say a 3/4 scale or maybe even slightly larger arcade that you could just plug, like this same product but bigger. If you're interested in that, do me a favor, just give me a 1 in the chat. Let's see if we can show our friend here the ones if it's something you're interested in. I'll be honest with you, I'm very interested in if you did this in a larger form factor. I think what you've come up with here is pretty cool as your first product in that niche, in that space. Look, oh, Sean, look at all the ones coming in. What do you know, buddy? Something for you to think about and take home and talk with the buddies. But
see, I see AMN has put a 0 there, but that's only because he's realizing he's going to have to work at a higher resolution if we do a big one.
All right, Restralgia, I want to make sure you get some time to shine here, my friend. What do you got for our good friend Sean? It's been a long show, and I'm sure you got a couple more questions for him.
You might as well keep him up till breakfast now. I don't know why we're stopping. I mean,
no, I mean, yeah, we may as well. Then he can get the rest of his weekend under wraps. But I think, I mean, we've kind of talked a lot about the alpha. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to shift it a little bit because I'm more curious about not necessarily the hardware side of things, but the software side of things. With the Duke Nukem series that you guys released, you guys actually remastered Duke Nukem 1 and 2. And my understanding was that was done in-house. Like, you guys had a very significant role in that entire remastering process. And I think what you guys have done with that cartridge and those games is actually quite good. You really took like the old games, and they still feel like those old games, but they're just they they feel better. They're more modern. They take up the entire display rather than just being in their original aspect ratio. But you've given people the option to go back to that original aspect ratio. Are we going to start seeing more remasters? Like, are you guys going to be partnering with some of these licensors, remastering the games and then releasing them as exclusively remastered for the Evercade?
Ooh, I like that question.
That's a great question. I mean, one of the things that I would point to as well with the Duke Nukem stuff is we've got a bit of a deep dive video on our YouTube channel about sort of how it came about, who was involved, and things like that. It's been a passion project of our lead developer, Ryan, for a long time, that he wanted to do something with the Duke Nukem games. They were very close and dear to him. And at the same kind of time, these projects were beginning to come out with work making Duke Nukem 1 and 2 be rebuilt from the ground up, because the source code for these games doesn't actually exist. So in some ways, this remaster was a necessity more than anything else to actually get these games on there, because there was no way you could actually port these things properly. You can re-release what's already out there, but you can't change anything because the source code doesn't exist for it. So that became part of the project, and I think the rest of the Duke Nukem stuff then built around that. We were able to do this, and then we could get the rest, and it was an incredibly successful thing. I think everybody's really, really proud of the work that they did on it, and it's been great to see everybody's feedback on that. I think it's been universally loved, experiencing those games for the first time for a lot of people who know Duke from his 3D era onwards and not anything else. When it comes to other things and other remasters, if the situation presents itself and it's certainly worth the time and the effort, then certainly we will. There are always things happening where things might need to be changed or updated or anything else like that, and that always happens across all of retro gaming re-releases. So there's always an element of development into the titles that we have, but it depends what becomes apparent, what becomes available, and what we can do really, and what's already being worked on. The Tomb Raider remasters that have just released, a lot of that came about because a project was already in existence that made that more accessible for it to happen. And I believe the lead of that project actually has been working on the games with Crystal Dynamics. So, we're certainly not the first company to do this from this way round. And if there are things that are out there that are more sensible to release on something like Evercade than trying to throw it out to the wilds of a digital store, then sure, we'll always be happy to look at the right things at the right time.
Okay. Do you have any other questions for Restralgia?
I don't. A lot of the things I was going to ask, we've already covered. I do actually want to one more thing. I guess we kind of covered this, and I know that we talked about the emulation side, and you guys do a really good job with that, above and beyond, I think, anybody else in this space or any other products, even remotely in this price range. You guys have top tier emulation. You had mentioned Glover. You had the 64-bit release on the Pico 4 cartridge. N64 is an interesting console to emulate, and it's also interesting in terms of its licenses. I know that you guys are anything is possible, but is there any other, and without saying specifically the title or titles or even the publisher, are there other N64 games that you guys have already acquired the license for that we will see at some point in the future on a cartridge?
I can't speak to the status of whether they're acquired or not or anything else, but I can answer that with a yes, there are more things that are available. Okay. There are more things that we could do, and we certainly would like to. We just need to make sure that it's sensible in the way that we release them, that the people are getting the best that they can for what they're paying on a cart. One of the good things about Glover is it was part of the Pico Interactive catalog, so we were able to bring that game along with a few other games as well to bring more to that cartridge. So if there's anything else that's out there, we always try and make sure that what you're getting in that cart is the best value that you can for the most interesting thing. We've kind of done, from where we spoke like nearly 3 years ago now, we've kind of done some mad things. We've released one game on a cart But the reason we did that one game is because it was a very, very strong indie title with a really unique and great visual style with a passionate developer behind it. And we bought into their passion. And all of the Evercade fans and some people that hadn't noticed Evercade came on board because of that collection as well. So, we'll always make sure that the right thing is available for the right time. And, when it comes to 64-bit emulation, it might be, a couple of games on a cart as opposed to 7 or 8, depending on what's available. But we need to make sure that that package is right. So, hopefully we will do.
Okay. Carl, what do you got for
a question? Is there a chance that a vertical version of this cabinet would come out at some point in time?
Maybe not. I honestly can't say for that at the moment. It's one of the things we did obviously look at was how we support vertical games on this thing, especially because having done the EXP, we have a way for you to play vertical games on a handheld on a 16:9 screen without having to just crunch it into that small section. So if you turn the console on its side, you play it vertically and you get the full gamut of it. One thing I will say with this being 4x3 is that the kind of squash that you get is nowhere near as bad as you would do on a 16:9 device. So the actual ability to play it is a lot better on those things with much less black bars, it's not small in there. So it's kind of the best size that we could do to fit the most games that we have. As you guys know, there's no real, uniform standard when it comes to arcade screen ratios or console screen ratios or anything else. But 4:3 is mostly the go-to ratio for most of the games that we have on our devices. So it's one of those, we could possibly do something else in future. We could maybe look to see whether there's ways to engineer a vertical. But we also just want to make sure, that the best experience is possible for the most amount of games that people are going to play. So that's kind of why we've gone down that route.
So when you look at your beta version of this in the future, you might want to take a look at what AtGames did with their AtGames Legends Ultimate Mini. They have a pop and lock rotating screen type option. And I think one of the other desk style arcades, one of the Taito ones, has one as well.
The Egret Mini.
Yeah, the Egret.
So we have one of those in the office. So obviously we listed that. One of the other things that's also worth noting on this as well is we are doing a new device here that's new for us, and we want to make sure that it gets into people's hands and it works. And one of the things that when it comes to, people always ask us, why haven't you done an analog control on your device?
Oh, yeah, analog.
One of the main reasons for that is because basically nothing we do uses analog controls. They all use D-pad, they all use things like that. So it's just a control that a lot of people are used to because of the modern context, but it's pretty not functional for a lot of that stuff. But the other reason is the more you add to something, the more you have the potential for something to break or go wrong. And if there's if we went out with the Evercade Alpha, we want to make sure that this thing works and that it hits the ground running and everybody gets the best experience possible. And the more variables you add to that, the more risk of that not happening. So maybe that kind of situation is possible in the future. Maybe it's possible to do it at a decent price in the future. I mean the AtGames thing, I know it's smaller or anything, but I still think it's quite pricey still, isn't it? The price point of that, I think, was...
that's around a 3/4 scale arcade, individual size 3/4 scale arcade. Funny enough, one of their business decisions was the same reason that you guys are doing this for a small scale, because it was meant to go into places that wouldn't have the size or the the room for one of their larger scale arcade Legends Ultimate. But so I think they sell it for around $450 US, and that's a 3/4 scale arcade.
Yeah, that's one of the things that even though I know a lot of people are saying about the price, and we've talked about this already, but if we were to come out of the gates and say, hey, this thing is $500, it's not going to happen, right? So
it'd be dead on arrival. It'd be too much.
I did have a real hard, difficult question for you. I can't let you off that easy here now. So one of the really interesting things about this is that Capcom have been really hard to get anybody to work with. Like no other home arcade company or any other real gaming company has been able to get Capcom to kind of move away from Arcade 1-Up in the last little while. So it's really surprising to see Capcom branded arcades outside of that Arcade 1-Up brand. I mean, how did you pull that off? I know you're going to give me the answer, well, we asked, but I have to ask, like, I mean, this is basically them almost moving away from being a partner with Arcade 1-Up too.
I think there's a lot of trust that's been built up between Capcom and us, because our introduction with Capcom to Evercade stuff isn't arcade and arcade replica size things. It's the handheld. It was through the handheld device. So, you know, we built up the trust in what we could do with their titles, with their stuff in the form factor that everybody likes, and it reviewing well. So when this became an option for us and we approached Capcom with the project, they were much more amenable for us doing it than maybe they might have been somebody who just turned up at the door wanting something. You know, we're not the only people with Capcom licenses. You know, I think there are people that are on the lower value end of that market that have had Capcom licenses before and things like that. Also, it's who we speak to. You know, Arcade 1-Up, for example, are an American-based company, so they deal with Capcom from an American office. We deal with Capcom from a European office, and obviously both offices will end up coordinating and going to Japan and everything else with these kind of things. But, you know, everybody has their own deals in their own markets that they make, and, you know, we still all sell globally, but, you know, it all comes through very different channels, possibly for different people.
So, Sean, I really, really greatly appreciate you taking time. I just realized we've been going for 2 hours. You're just so calm. I could just listen to you talk. Whereas I'm all hyper and crazy, man. And I also,
I don't blame you. I mean, I've seen so many of these now. I mean, I would be having to deal with
and I just noticed, the sun is coming up outside your window. How about a big?
Do you know what?
How?
Do you know what? I just noticed that about 30 seconds ago.
So do me a favor, folks in the live chat. Give Sean a big thank you for coming on and spending an extended period of time talking with us about these products. And Sean, I'm going to let you, before we say our final goodbyes here, tell me why I should buy or pre-order this product next week. What is your elevator pitch for me? Why should I consider this Evercade mini arcade console?
Well, I know you want to play Street Fighter Alpha again, but also, you probably want to play a lot of other things as well, and you can. You know, we've got that ability to put that cartridge in and play a plethora of games that we have available in these cartridges, just like that. There's no problem. I mean, you get my phone. There you go. In fact, there they are. They're very, very nice shelf space things. You know, you can put them on there, and you physically own these things. You know, I mean, it's a bit of a marketing term in what I'm saying here, but it's kind of like there's no DIY. You don't have to muck about with this thing. You don't have to build it yourself or do anything. There's no fuss. You don't have to set up emulation. You don't have to spend hours upon hours in doing it. You can literally take this thing out of the box, play it, get a cart, put it in, play it. You can save the game and take it to your EXP if you want to. You know, it's got that kind of cross compatibility. You know, what we want to do is just make this easy for everyone and get people back to what they actually really enjoy. It's that classic nostalgic gaming experience of just playing, because that's what we remember. And I know a lot of people enjoy the modding, they enjoy the fuss, they enjoy doing stuff, and that's fine. You know, you can enjoy both, but what we do is to try and get as many people into gaming, as many people into remembering, as many people into owning something that they can have, whether it's a collection, whether it's something they just remember. And you know, this is a very quick, easy, and I'm going to say affordable way, even that what we've been talking about with the prices. You know, it's an affordable way to do this in the form factor.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, before we go, we got to give a big shout out. Sean, you definitely want to reach out and touch base with Brooklyn Menace. He's one of the biggest.
I've been watching Brooklyn over the last couple of days doing a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
so I will be in touch with you, man.
Brooklyn is a huge fan of Evercade, and
he owns every Evercade cart, every product,
multiple.
Huge
and in
fan.
fact,
he owns the hat. I saw the hat in his appearances on Rexa and something else. I can't remember the name now.
I had Brooklyn come on my channel recently, and he informed me this is something I didn't know, and I have about, I don't know, like 30 some of the cartridges. He let me know that some of these cartridges that are out of print are worth like $300-400 on eBay that people are selling these things for. And he's like, he's telling me he has multiple copies of these. So he's the
guy to go to.
Yeah, he's the guy to go to. For if you have an Evercade addiction, reach out to Brooklyn Menace. But definitely, I encourage you to reach out to him. Maybe pop on his channel. I'm sure Brooklyn would just be delighted.
Yeah, no, definitely, man.
So yeah. Guys, we're going to have Carl send us on our way in just a minute. Big shout out to Sean here, as well as Blaze Entertainment. Evercade, hey man, they're going to throw something out there and see if we like it. And it sounds like they're pretty confident that we're going to enjoy this mini barcade or bar top arcade machine. Looks very interesting. Pre-orders go live next week, and it'll play all your cartridges. That's over 500 games. That's pretty cool in my opinion. Carl, whenever you're ready, send these good folks on their way. I didn't realize it was 2 hours already. Holy cow. Thanks so much, everybody. Thanks so much, Sean.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in to us. If you want to play Alpha, this is the only way that you can play it on a cabinet officially licensed. So pre-order if that interests you. And we appreciate you. We love you. And until next time, we'll see you on the web.
Oh, I'm